Hashtag Rich Dad Poor Dad, the core lessons, over 32 million copies sold. Translated into 51 languages. Sitting on bestseller lists for over 6 years straight. And yet, the majority of people who read this book walk away and do absolutely nothing different with their money. The ideas inside Rich Dad Poor Dad are not complicated. But they are deeply uncomfortable, and that discomfort is exactly why most people choose to ignore them. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover the core lessons Robert Kiyosaki built this entire book around. You will learn why the school system is quietly setting you up for financial struggle, why your house is probably not the asset you think it is, and why working harder at your job may actually be moving you further away from wealth, not closer to it. And there is one lesson buried in this book that most people skip entirely, because it forces you to confront something very specific about the way you think about money. We will get there. Stay with me. Rich Dad Poor Dad was published in 1997 by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter. The book tells the story of two father figures in Kiyosaki's life. His biological father, his poor dad, was a highly educated man, a government employee who believed in job security, steady paychecks, and climbing the academic ladder. His friend Mike's father, his rich dad, never finished 8th grade, but built a business empire in Hawaii and eventually became one of the wealthiest men on the island. The contrast between these two men forms the backbone of the entire book. One followed conventional wisdom. The other questioned everything. And their financial outcomes could not have been more different. Kiyosaki uses this contrast not to shame formal education, but to expose a specific gap, the gap between what schools teach and what money actually requires. The first and most foundational lesson in the book is this: the rich do not work for money. Let that sink in for a second. Most people spend their entire lives trading time for dollars. They work, they get paid, they spend, they need more money, so they work more. Kiyosaki calls this the rat race. It is a loop. And the terrifying thing about it is that it looks completely normal. It is what your parents did. It is what your teachers encouraged. It is what society rewards with titles and salaries and retirement packages. But the wealthy, according to Kiyosaki, think about money in a completely different way. Instead of asking how do I earn more, they ask how do I make money work for me. That shift in question changes everything. The second lesson is arguably the most controversial in the entire book. Kiyosaki argues that financial literacy is more important than income. He makes a staggering point that most people, no matter how much they earn, never build real wealth, because they do not understand the difference between assets and liabilities. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. His definition of an asset is deceptively simple. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out. By this definition, your car is a liability. Your credit card debt is a liability. And your home, the thing most financial advisors celebrate as your greatest investment, Kiyosaki calls a liability too. Why? Because for most people, a home costs money every single month. Mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, insurance. It drains your cash flow. It does not generate income. Therefore, by Kiyosaki's framework, it is not an asset. But here is what nobody talks about. This idea was not just controversial when the book came out. It was considered financial heresy. The entire post-war American financial identity was built around homeownership as the cornerstone of wealth building. Kiyosaki did not just challenge that idea. He dismantled it with a simple accounting principle. And the reason it still makes people angry today is because deep down, they know he has a point. Lesson 3 takes us into the mind. Kiyosaki argues that the single biggest obstacle between most people and financial freedom is not lack of opportunity. It is fear. Specifically, the fear of losing money. He writes that both his poor dad and his rich dad experienced fear around money. The difference was what they did with that fear. His poor dad let fear drive him toward security, a government job, a pension, a guaranteed paycheck. His rich dad let fear drive him toward education. The more he understood money, the less the fear controlled him. And this is a critically important distinction. Kiyosaki is not saying be reckless. He is saying that avoiding risk entirely is itself a risky strategy, because playing it safe guarantees mediocrity. The fourth core lesson is about the mind game that taxes play on working people. This one is grounded in real numbers. In most developed countries, employees pay income tax before they see a single dollar of their paycheck. The money is taken first. Business owners and investors, on the other hand, earn money, pay their expenses, and then pay tax on what remains. This structural difference compounds dramatically over a lifetime. Kiyosaki argues that the tax code was literally written by the wealthy, for the wealthy. Understanding it, legally using it, is not cheating. It is financial literacy in action. Most employees never learn this because schools never teach it. And so the cycle continues. Lesson 5 is where the book shifts from philosophy to action. Kiyosaki introduces what he calls the 4 quadrants, later expanded in his book Cashflow Quadrant. But in Rich Dad Poor Dad, the seed is already planted. He divides income earners into those who work for a system, employees and self-employed people, and those who build systems, business owners and investors. The critical insight is that only the last 2 quadrants generate passive income. Income that comes whether you are working or not. And passive income, Kiyosaki argues, is the only real path to financial freedom. Because if you have to show up to get paid, you are one health crisis, one layoff, one economic downturn away from disaster. Rhetorical question: how many people do you know who earn a good salary, live in a nice house, drive a newer car, and are genuinely one missed paycheck away from serious financial trouble? According to a Federal Reserve report, nearly 40% of American adults could not cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money. 40%. And most of these people are not low earners. They are middle-class workers who simply never learned how to keep what they earn. This brings us to the deep insight most readers miss entirely. Kiyosaki spends significant time on what he calls minding your own business. And he does not mean quitting your job to start a company. He means building an asset column quietly, consistently, in parallel to whatever else you are doing. Real estate, stocks, intellectual property, small businesses. Things that generate income without requiring your direct time. His rich dad taught him to start doing this young. To resist the urge to inflate his lifestyle with every raise. To pay himself first, meaning invest before spending, not the other way around. This is the lesson that most people intellectually agree with and then do absolutely nothing about, because the pull of lifestyle inflation is relentless and immediate. What does all of this look like in the real world? Consider 2 people with identical salaries. Person A gets a raise and upgrades their apartment, leases a better car, and takes a nicer vacation. Person B gets the same raise and funnels the difference into an index fund or a rental property. In year 1, their lives look nearly identical. In year 10, they are living in completely different financial realities. The compound effect of building an asset column, even slowly, is almost impossible to overstate. Warren Buffett made more than 96% of his total wealth after the age of 65. Not because he got lucky late in life. Because he started early and never stopped building.